Welcome back to Horrible. There's an amazing spy story taking place in Iran. Yesterday, an Iranian nuclear scientist was assassinated in a rush-hour attack in the streets of Tehran. It is likely part of a wider covert war going on against the Iranian nuclear program. Look what's happened just in the past few years. At least 5 scientists have been targeted in similar attacks. One of the scientists survived. The others were killed. A number of mysterious explosions have been reported at sites thought to be military complexes. One of the attacks killed a top missile expert. And back in 2009, the Stuxnet computer virus infested the country's nuclear facilities, causing significant damage and delay. No country has taken responsibility for any of these attacks on the Iranian nuclear program, but Iran has accused the United States and Israel. Well, yesterday, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton forcefully denied American involvement.
I want to categorically deny any United States involvement in any kind of act of violence inside Iran.
So what's going on here? Robert Baer is a former CIA officer in the Middle East. He's now an intelligence columnist for Time magazine. His latest book is The Company We Keep. Thank you, sir. What's going on? Just generally, what's going on? All these attacks have a pattern. Does it have the fingerprints of Mossad, the Israeli agency?
Oh, it's undoubtedly the Israelis. It couldn't be anybody else. You just look at the targets. If it was the Iranian opposition, they would be going after political leaders, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, intelligence agencies. You look at the target and you look at the capabilities. It's not American. There is no lethal finding against Iran. The Israelis, as far as I can see, are trying to provoke the Iranians into doing something.
What would that be? That's always my question. Consequences explained and consequences dealt with when they come. What could, we're vulnerable over there. We have an American over there who's just been condemned to death for espionage. Is that one of the assets, if you will, brutally stated against us, that they can execute him? Would they go that far as, payback for something like this, assuming we had some role in knowing about this at least?
Oh, they've done a couple things. They've hit the British embassy, overran it. They kidnapped this American ex-FBI agent, Levinson. They could do a number of things, but what we're seeing is an escalation, Chris, and it's almost as if the intention is to get the Iranians to fire a missile at an oil tanker in the Strait of Hormuz, which would cause a wider war. It would force the United States.
Why would that help us?
It wouldn't help us, it would help them, because the Israelis would force us into hitting the Iranians, hitting back, and that's exactly what they want.
Oh, you think it's Israel trying to get us into this thing? Let's go right now to NBC's chief foreign correspondent, Richard Engel. Richard, you had a report on the nightly news last night. Give us the gist of it. Where are we at on this thing?
Well, I think you need to understand this in a larger context. Last month, the United States passed incredibly harsh sanctions on Iran, and the expected outcome of this is that Iran feels backed into a corner. Iran has responded with some very bellicose language, and now there is tension in the Strait of Hormuz. So going back to what your last guest, who I admire greatly, was talking about, if you want to hit Iran and you need a context to do that, you need a pretext to do it, the way to do that is by forcing Iran into a corner, forcing your adversary to make some sort of aggressive move, and then everyone will think you are correct when you respond with force.
Why is it important for Israel, if it's Israel, I assume, doing the eventual attack on the Iranian nuclear facilities, how would that help Israel if they were to take? Would they be seen as somehow defending their rational? The whole world is tough on Israel, let's put it that way. Would anybody ever take the edge off their antipathy towards Israel attacking Iran, no matter what preceded it?
Well, right now, let's say Israel goes out and launches an attack on Iran. The next day, oil prices go up through the roof. We're talking $200+ a barrel for oil. Everyone blames Israel. You picked a fight, and there was ways around this. If suddenly Iran feels strangled, its economy is under collapse, it does something like put some sea mines in the Strait of Hormuz, oil prices go up anyway, then an Israeli attack happens, or a U.S.-Israeli attack happens, or some sort of military action happens against Iran, then you look like you're the savior, not someone who provoked a crisis.
Well, let me get back to Bob. Do you believe this is what's going on? I mean, if it's speculation, tell me that. But do you think a rational observer looking at this would say this is moving towards creating a pretext for an eventual attack on the Iranian nuclear facilities?
Oh, I think
is what we're
absolutely.
watching?
I think absolutely. This is speculation, of course. I don't know what the Israelis are planning. I know the White House doesn't want a war with Iran, not before this election. But we see from all quarters this pressure, this logical war that keeps on marching forward. And the Iranians are looking at it this way. They've got a year or two to hit the nuclear facilities. They can't, as Richard said, they cannot be seen to initiating this. So if you keep on assassinating these people in Tehran, it's a humiliation to the Iranians. You just may get a reaction out of them, which will look stupid, and then the world will say, you know, there's nothing else we could have done except hit the Israelis. And I think there's a strategy here, because these assassinations alone don't stop their nuclear program. They're simply a provocation.
Is that a good analysis objectively from your view, Richard?
I think it probably is. The Israelis can't be seen, or it's very difficult for them to be seen as drawing first blood. Killing a 32-year-old scientist who worked in procurement is not going to stop the program. They've so far killed 5 people, 4 of them civilians, 1 of them a general who were involved in either the missile program or the nuclear program directly. It has a psychological impact, but it's not going to really slow down or stop the program. So I think you have to look at what is the other objective. Is the objective to try and make yourselves feel better? Is it to try and put the Iranians on edge? Is it to try and provoke a response from them? Or is it a bit of all of that?
How can the United States not see this as adversarial by Israel to try to hook us into a war, Richard? If that's the case, if Bob Baer is right in saying this is an attempt, a 3-way move to try to get us in by getting the Iranians mad at us, by the actions they take in terms of these assassinations, if that's seen to manipulate us into a war we don't want to get into, how can we not see that as relatively, well, from an ally, certainly a hostile?
Well, I'm not sure if it's necessarily to draw the U.S. into a war, but it gives Israel the ability to do this action unilaterally. I don't think that Israel would tell the United States that it's going to do it. I think we would just wake up and it's happened. They would need to tell a few people, probably Saudi Arabia, to give them flyover rights. But I don't think the Israelis would expect the U.S. to do this for them.
Last thought from you, Bob. I thought you were saying that maybe you are. Let's get it clear on the table here. You're saying that Israel's trying to provoke the Iranians into attacking us or attacking them. What are they trying to provoke here?
If we're attacked, it gives the Israelis and the Americans, puts them on the same side, no choice but to hit the Iranians. It's, you know, but they need our Air Force to complete the job. They cannot do it alone.
Going after the facilities. Thank you. This is something we're going to be talking about, by the way, from now to Election Day, because I've been reading Elliot Abrams today in the Wall Street Journal. All the politics are on the table right now. This is of interest to both our country, Israel, and, of course, Iran. It's all involved in politics to a large extent, and not just the survival of Israel down the road. Anyway, thank you, Richard Engel. Thank you, Bob Baer.